Probably not a very exciting video, but it is to me. Just got the Bluetti here, the AC180P. It's been just trickle charging up with solar cell outside in the sunlight. It's been running a home hi-fi all day, and dare I say fans and humidifiers and all sorts of stuff. It's probably a power board, about 7 wall warts plugged into it, which is including chargers for Nintendo Switches and like media players and all sorts of stuff, right? So at the moment it's registering at a solid just shy of 70 watts in use while those things run. Now let's just be legitimate here. Let's have a look. We're going to include the fact there is a full stereo home amplifier, including the DACs and like the various things that need to go with that, right? So, and the volume on that is set to a little bit over 9 o'clock position. Big toroidal power supply in that Class AB amp, and we can see there's a power board over there with just a ton of things on it, which will include the switch, include the OLED TV, which is just in standby mode. These things all chew through power. Charging there a big music player. So that's the 70 watts that's currently on it. Now these things here will run quite happily up to about 2350, according to what I was looking at last night. Oh, sorry, touching this one. And in fact, if you put them in boost mode for certain types of appliances, they'll even spit out a bit more than that. But it looked to be they generated a pure sine wave all the way with about a 2% variance once you started to get to about the 1700 watt mark. But they were basically a bit less than 1% variance as measured by a UK YouTuber. They were about 1% variance on the sine signal, the recreated sine wave, all the way up to about 1600 watts, and then they kind of got a bit noisy at about 2.5%, right? Like, this is just fantastic. So to say that your audio is going to sound better off something like this, you are recreating better power. But what I've gone and done today, it's quite hot, and it's the right time of year in Australia. It's the end of summer, so aircon units are on the cheap. I managed to find one for basically half price, and it's the world's littlest aircon unit as far as I can figure. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to move this big old bag back a bit. Probably not the best location here. I just like the fans to have a straight pass through. And what do we got? So I'm going to plug that in. Oh, excuse me for 1 second. Right, so I heard a beep, beep, beep. Now, a particular aircon I bought, I've just read the handbook through to through. It does say it's 3 minutes before the compressor turns on, I think, after it goes on. But we did hear a beep as I put the power plug in. Now sadly, because I was putting the power plug in, I kind of halved it in. It might be that the aircon unit has gone into a safety mode where it's like, oh no, hang on, we've just tripped, and therefore the handbook says it won't reignite for another 3 minutes if that's the case. Anyway, it's just using a propane, I think is the gas, R290. It's the gas type here. World's littlest aircon. Hard to talk about them though. It's a 2.6 kilowatt unit. The handbook itself says if modern units don't look as impressive as units built before 2020, it's just because the measuring standards have changed. And I guess in one way we could say is that the numbers are probably more honest. Quite a possibility. Anyway, it looks like there's a power button there. Alright, so look, it is installed. It's more or less ready to roll. But I'd like to be looking at the screen for the moment I hit that power on button. So if the viewers at home can trust, I'm going to reach off camera and touch that in just a second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to point this just around there. Hopefully if I touch the screen just there, it sets focus right about there. Okay, so we are still recording. Are we ready? Oh, okay, it was a longish press. 700. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. So from everything I read, and again, I don't think the compressor's kicked in yet, but the low mode, it does seem to be able to run on 1000 watt of input if I put it on the low mode. And tell you what, I'm quite happy seeing those numbers. Now, I wouldn't believe that's in fan mode, nor would I believe that's in dehumidifier mode. But the handbook itself did describe it as the compressor doesn't fully kick on for a couple of minutes after you turn it on. Just, I think it's to stop surge being too high. Could be. Anyway, mildly exciting. So those numbers there are looking fairly stable. We've obviously got a nice little rattle sound over here. It did say it was about 55 dB. Wow, it's a fair bit of air movement going on around it. And okay, that's there. So it's actually saying it's in cool mode. So I personally believe that it hasn't kicked in. And obviously I probably need to put batteries in the remote in order to make it effective. But let's just come over here. I've got a humidifier, as I say, running. It's saying inside we're at 38. So we've got a bus here. We haven't had it for long enough. We've actually used it to move house. And whilst there is some wool insulation in this rear room that we're working on, we've got a bed raised up. There's a diesel motor, I guess, in under that. There's an access panel for that. So that whole bed frame lifts up and there is an area there to get in under. But the missus has gone and she's put this wool insulation all nicely into the walls in here, and then a buffer of clothing and whatnot. We've got pillows all up against the rear there. It's quite comfortable. It does a good job with the temp in this zone, either keeping it too warm or too cool, maybe. Don't know. But look, what we do see is there's a nice solid 38 there. We haven't got the insulation of the roof yet, as you can see. A big roll of insulation possibly behind me. 38, that's degrees Celsius, so we're basically sitting at 100 degrees Fahrenheit today. Up around, it was at higher than 40 in here before. That's actually the reason I shot down. Just out of respect to life forms. So what I was told is in the various modes of this, if I put it in fan mode, it will, the actual temperature it says on the dial is the room temperature it measures. Okay, so now it's in fan mode. Wow, that really blows the air. Okay, so it's nice and loud. I did read it would be 51 dB even in fan mode. Oh, that air is hot. No, thank you. And I guess it hasn't measured the room, or it hasn't, for whatever reason, oh, that's amazing. So I think the outlet pipe on the back here is, well, it depends on what mode you're in. And the booklet said that you need to remove this if you're going to be in fan mode. So my belief is that it must take air in there. There is actually cool air on the side of the bus. I've got that out. It's facing to the ocean at this time of day. A nice breeze comes in. But yeah, I really must just say, excuse the background. You can see we've got framework for areas of the bus that are yet to be built in amongst all sorts of stuff that needs to get to storage, right? And it's just, it's a bit of a first couple of days of van life, but it doesn't make for good review videos, does it, on the nature of the good old Bluetti over here. Alright, so let's have a look. Look at that. So it's doing nothing. So just like it said, if the compressor kicked out, it would be 3 minutes again before it tries again, unless it goes into its own ambient mode. If it realises it's got the temperature below what you've set it to, it will put the compressor in a low power wait for it mode. But my understanding is the circuitry of the unit itself is that it's a 3 minute wait time from the time from the last time the compressor was running before it will try again. And it's just built to be a safety feature. But at this point there's no input obviously other than the 116 there. We do expect that percentage to just start dropping like crazy. But for me it was more a case of just testing it. I guess if the input and the output are more or less the same, we expect it really not necessarily to drop too much. But look, a lot of the rules for these sorts of high-powered devices is you can't run them off long extension cables. You really got to run them directly into the wall. You're not meant to plug them into multi-socketed power boards and things. So yeah, but it's not using the 500 watts it was using a second ago, which I'm understanding is part of the buffer and it preparing and getting ready to roll. So yeah, apologies, I probably shouldn't have hit those buttons. I just thought I'd get a temperature read from the unit itself to see how different it might be at this point to just a couple of metres this way, where we've got this puppy in action. Oh dear, but we can see that moisture it's spitting out there. One of the features of the unit I've just brought behind me is it is a dehumidifier. That would be one of its modes. But look, I think, I'm sorry to delay the video. The most exciting videos on the internet are of course 3 minute long videos. It was certainly not my intention to make this in any way a long video, but I'm not of the belief that it's actually doing anything as yet. Just based on what we see over here. Oh, there we go. It's back up to the 500 mark. So I guess that compressor's getting ready to roll. The amps that it draws in total is less than the amp output capability of the Bluetti here, which is, I believe it's an 8 amp output capable device. I think it needs 6.5 amps for what I consider the world's smallest aircon unit. It's about half the price of the cheapest aircon units in town. It hasn't got any Wi-Fi or Bluetooth in it. I love it. It's the right time of year to be buying said sorts of toys, if you will, or tools, if you consider them that way. But it's nice to see that it's about 600 and maybe 620, 630 watts of power. So that is just fantastic. But the point, I guess, is that the Bluetti can run it. So look, in a scenario like this, I would feel a lot safer using it with the AC feed-in mode and having this Bluetti as a device that restores a pure sine wave and generates the amperes at this location. Getting back to the rules and regs for running lots of heating, lots of cooling devices where they have to be plugged in directly at the wall. The fact that I've got a huge couple of extension cables running up to the nearby shed or some such in order to charge this battery brick, the power station, the Bluetti, if I do need to, I have that luxury. But I do like to live more or less. I'm testing for independence at the moment, and I haven't got my generator. I'll be picking it up on the weekend, and it will output a kilowatt sine wave. So it will actually meet the needs of that aircon unit, maybe in its low power state. From what I can figure, it is a 1300 watt draw otherwise. So my plan was just to use a small generator to top up this battery brick if it was that the weather got such that I needed to be using an aircon unit. That would be my method. Is for days if you haven't got enough solar cells to top your Bluetti up or top your power station up inside of a day, then for the days when you really are going to get hit and need to use the high power devices, that's when generators are quite handy to be able to top up these battery banks. So that will be my safeguard plan, if you will. A couple of solar cells for regular use, but for when the weather is extreme and I can't be bothered to move the bus out of the sun, out of the full sun, on the days like this where the thermo might crack a 40 degree temperature, which is over 100 degrees Fahrenheit for those in those zones. Imperial versus metric, I guess we're talking about here. Oh, here we go. It's exciting. The watts have gone up just a little bit. So look, while we're waiting for the full 3 minutes to kick over, which I think we're in the mark now. I took note it was about 9 minutes on this clip. It should be. And we are seeing that power going up gradually. Wow, I do like the way this thing works. Yeah, look, I have noticed that the Bluetti as a box, it's not a unit that over-promises and under-delivers, which seems to be what most of the market is. You know, play the spec sheet warfare game, give the numbers the consumers are looking for, and whether or not you can really hit them, it doesn't matter, you got their money. But the Bluetti advertising doesn't seem to work that way, and they do seem to be very generous with their margins. And I'll give an example. A power bank I'd been trying before this, its sine wave was really good if you're only using a small percentage of the 2000 watt sine wave, pure sine wave it would generate. If you say under 200 watts, it would be a much purer sine wave than if you were using 500, 800 or 1000 watts, for example. And up towards 1500 watts, it was getting a bit crazy. So on the Bluetti here, up to about 1500 watts, it's still less than 1% distortion on the sine wave. It's such a pure sine wave, it's just fantastic. But when I was making coffees on another power station, the output power would only shoot up to 1350 watts, when I believe the machine wants about 1600 watts. At least that's what the label says. And just now, like what I'm seeing, it conforms with what the label is on the device, so that makes me happy. But yeah, with the coffee machine on a different device, the output power it was showing was about 1350, and then I would hear the coil. Well, the coffee machine itself, about every 7 seconds or so, to keep the coil of hot water at that boiling point, it would keep shooting 1350 watts, and you would hear the fans in the battery bank fire up. Now on a Bluetti power station, even with less rated output power, say 10% less rated output power, it actually outputs a pure 1600 watts of power to the coffee machine, and every 7 seconds or so it doesn't fire up for a split second, right? Like, it literally gets the water to temperature, and subjectively speaking, does that make a better cup of coffee if the water is at the temperature it should be? Well, absolutely. I mean, my coffee machine has a capability to tailor the water temperature by 1 degree up or down, and so if my power bank is tailoring my water temperature down by a degree involuntarily, that to me sounds like a recipe for disaster in terms of good tasting coffee. But to say this is a perfect unit, I really like this unit. I'm very happy I'm seeing the way it's performing. And even though a lot of our power stations have surge capability of more than double what the rated output power is, designed for compressors and things like older aircon units, I suppose, that didn't have any smart logic for the way that they would switch on. The way this device is turned on and the way it has ramped its power up, I'm actually going to give that a bit of a thumbs up. So look, for anyone, obviously I'm just trying to provide information about the Bluetti, but for anyone who might want to know a little bit more about this particular unit, no, sorry, all the power information's actually on the other side where I can't get to. So what I'll do is I'll just put a note there. It's a DCP9C, I think is the model number, a Dimplex. There was another model, a DCP9BW, which was actually where I got this part price matched against. And that was selling for much cheaper than the part that I've just picked up. So I don't know if there's any difference between them. I don't believe there is. I do know a lot of the mainstream manufacturers, a lot of the retail outlets, chains, will get a slightly customised version of something given to them so that the SKU doesn't equal the same as another shop, so they technically don't have to price match. Sometimes there are subtle differences of, say, a little bit of RAM in a printer, a little bit less cache. I've seen that on TVs. I've seen a particular Samsung TV with a slightly different model number extension, the last couple of letters being slightly different, and one company might have a little bit more RAM on board, right? It's amazing the way things are tailored for the consumer market. But look, this is just fantastic. I'm really liking seeing what I'm seeing. I expected it to draw 1300 watts. Now, we know that I was already drawing 60 watts, and that's very stable. Right, we absolutely know all those other components were a solid 60. So what we're looking at there is about 1150. I'm expecting it might even go up a little bit further. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop making this video. I'm going to go put the batteries in the remote. I'm going to make sure I put it in the low power state and just do a few things there to try to drop that down to 1000. And I can confirm the brilliance of these power stations. If you're willing to think outside the box, or at least think about all the future scenarios that you might have. And for example, my family, we have zero interest in aircon. It's never been something that we're after, but because we haven't got our installation in at the moment, we're let's just say we're caught without, so it's something we're considering, and we're coming to recognise that it's probably a good thing to have up our sleeve if we need it. So would I be willing to run a generator on a day where I needed to run this for 6 hours or 8 hours or something? Absolutely. And would I then have the generator on the input to the Bluetti, and then having the Bluetti output the pure sine wave? Yes, I would. The generator I'm getting is, as I say, doesn't have enough output power to meet the needs of the aircon, but as a supplemental input and an ability to use my device here, it will be a little bit rough on the batteries, don't get me wrong. Some power stations are in-out, but just about all of more than 90% of the market, from what I can figure, will certainly go via that battery. So there is a bit of wear and tear on your battery, but we are looking here at devices that even if you charge them every day, you get to the 10-year mark before you've lost 20% of your operating capacity. So even if I lost 20%, it still would meet my needs. Each day we wake up after running everything overnight and watching TV at a big TV and big stereo amps and everything, and I've still got more than 30% left in the battery in the morning, and that's enough to make well more than 3 or 4 rounds of cappuccinos on a fairly power-hungry coffee machine where I do froth the milk and go all the extra effort. So I don't run down that last 30%, because that, I believe, is the best way to extend your battery life. And I also like charging at a very, very gentle charge rate, so I choose the silent charge rate. But from what I can see here, it certainly meets my needs. I'm probably going to put some power input now so that the input is greater than the output, and I might continue to watch what goes on. But look, I just wanted to put up some further evidence. I understand these AC180s have been out now for so long that there's probably 10,000 videos covering every aspect of them. Sometimes it's the fun is the discussion of what goes with it, and at the very least it's just being able to hear the voice of another person, the happy camper if you will, trying to do all the same things that you're doing, and maybe along the way some of the discussion widens the topic or gives food for think. So I'll say well wishes with, hopefully I'll see you in another one, and to be continued.